very proud tonight to stand on behalf of the people of Timmins-James Bay to speak to Bill C-9, which is the Budget Implementation Act, and to set the record very clearly what we're discussing here. This is not normal budget implementation where in the past we would debate whether or not we support certain vision way forward of the government. And of course, under a budget bill, this is a matter of confidence. What we are discussing tonight is the abuse of parliamentary process. And I think that when you look at this government, the Conservative government, you are looking at a government whose only track record is abuse of public process and abuse of parliamentary process. You know, we could go through the issues of the prorogation where they ran legislation not once but twice through the House and then flushed that legislation down the toilet because it was politically inconvenient to have to answer questions in the House of Commons, and then had to start the whole process over again, a complete staggering waste of taxpayers' dollars. We see the culture of secrecy that surrounds the PMO and surrounds all the offices of Parliament now. It's the inability of the public, of the media, of politicians to get answers from this government. We see it in this decision to create a manual to subvert the work of parliamentary committees by the government, monkey-wrenching committees, so that work could not be done. This was handed out to the committee chairs to subvert the work of Parliament. Now, of course, we see other examples of abuse of office. We see the industry minister, a minister of the Crown, who's there to represent the interests of Canada on the international stage, acting like a cheap ShamWow salesman for some cleaning products in his riding. Now, Mr. Speaker, I would ask you, when this guy didn't have a seat, would anybody have paid him to sell cleaning products? I don't think so. Maybe they would have hired him as a floor cleaner, but not to sell cleaning products. And yet he's standing there in front of a camera saying he represents the government of Canada, and he's hawking products for buddies of his. This is a staggering abuse of the public process. And now, how does that tie into this bill? Well, what this government has done is they've taken numerous issues that have to be scrutinized by the public, and they've slipped them in to the budget. And they've insisted, pass it right away, or we are going to force an election. We are going to huff and puff and blow the House down if we don't get our way. Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I'm showing to the people back home how big this budget bill is and all the hidden booby prizes that are left within this budget. For example, the decision to slip into here, the HST, to force down the throats of the senior citizens and the people on fixed incomes in British Columbia and Ontario without debate. They didn't allow any hearings on this. We see the decision, not surprising from the government that has become little more than the government of the tar sands, to strip more environmental assessment protections away from the Canadian public and from the environment. They don't have the guts to bring it into the House and a standard bill. Oh no, they're going to slip it into a budget bill and say it's a matter of confidence. We see the plan to sell off the AECL, our nuclear power agency, sell it off on the private market, maybe get 10 cents on the dollar, who knows. That's a staggering decision to take. But they're not willing to bring this before the public. They just want to slip it in, hide it away. It's an abusive process. Other serious issues, Mr. Speaker. Canada Post, the destabilization of Canada Post that's underway with their privatization efforts. I represent a region that's larger than the United Kingdom. Mail is essential. And mail has become more and more challenged over the years as more and more people are going online. And for mail service in rural areas to survive, you need the balance, you need the income. And the income that they rely on is being cut up, divided off, and again, sold off to the private sector. Softwood lumber. This is a government that sold out community after community to get a quick deal with the Bush conservatives, or Bush Republicans, who are very much like this conservative party. And now we see another plan to raise lumber tariffs in Ontario, Quebec, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan by 10%. Our sawmills are staggering, what's left of them. They're barely able to keep going. Most of them are shut, and this government is going to slip another 10% cost on that. Mr. Speaker, this is process after a process of abuse. I'm very shocked that what this government would do at the height of a recession is raid the EI fund, to steal $57 billion from the EI fund. It's not their money. This is money that was paid by Canadian workers as an insurance fund. And this government has bled red ink throughout the recession. Why? Because they gave one corporate tax break after another. There was no fiscal prudence. This government came in with a surplus and immediately started giving it away in massive corporate tax cuts. And for the folks back home, to get the real distinction, to get one of these tax breaks, you have to be profitable. So in the recession, who was making the money? Well, the banks were making money. The big oil companies were making money. They get the lion's share of these tax breaks. So further and further we see this country slipping into the red. So what does the government do? They decide to take it off the backs of working families. Because up to, in some areas, 60% of the people who pay into EI aren't even allowed to collect it. So $57 billion of the EI fund is being stolen from workers. That's money that could retrain families. That's money that could be used to get our people in communities that have been hard hit by the economy help. Now, Mr. Speaker, just this past month, we lost 1,000 jobs in my riding. We didn't just lose the jobs, we lost all the refining capacity of Ontario in copper and zinc. Thanks in part, large part, to this government's lack of national vision in terms of dealing with companies like Xstrata, companies like Vale Inco. So we have now 1,000 workers laid off in Timmins who've lost their jobs permanently because of this government's boneheaded mismanagement of the base metal industries in Canada. And yet, just as these workers are needing EI, the government is shutting the EI processing centers across Ontario. And they're not doing this publicly, they're doing it in secret. When you ask the Minister for Human Resources a straightforward, straight-up question, why are you choosing at this time, in a recession, to shut 15 of the 18 EI processing centers in Ontario? She says, you're fear-mongering. She can't even stand up and say what her own department's doing. She can't own up. These are the things that are being slipped through, hidden away from people. And so we see right now, Mr. Speaker, the EI processing operations in Owen Sound, Aurelia, Kenora, Belleville, North Bay, Timmins, Sault Ste. Marie, Ottawa, Brantford, Etobicoke, Barrie, Peterborough, Hamilton, Niagara Falls, Thunder Bay, Kitchener, Oshawa. It reads like a bus road to nowhere. All these offices are being closed by this government at a time when access to EI processing is needed. And why are they closing it? Because they never did believe in maintaining a balance. The minister herself said that she didn't want people to get fair benefits when they were unemployed because that might stop them from leaving the province and going to Fort McMurray to work in the tar sands. And we see the members cheering. I want that on the record. They're cheering for the fact that when people lose their job and they cannot maintain their way of life, that they have to go work for dirty oil in Alberta. And this is what this government's plan has been all along. So they've cut the EI processing operations. They don't even have the guts to stand up in this house. They don't have the guts to stand up in this house and to say that they are shutting down EI processing. They're doing it. Mr. Speaker, this is what this bill is about. This is a massive abuse of public process because they're forcing through gutting the environmental assessment processes, gutting the EI fund, gutting the ability of the forestry industry to get back on its feet because they're going after them with softwood tariffs, and of course they're gutting Canada Post. Well, Mr. Speaker, I don't think anybody back home should be surprised because Tory times are always hard times. That's the history of this party. And whenever they get in, they look after their buddies and they abuse everyone else. So, Mr. Speaker, the New Democrats have brought forward amendments to call this government back to account. We're taking out the things that don't belong in this bill. Let's vote on a straight-up budget, one way or the other. But we will not sit back and allow this government to abuse process. Maybe the non-existent Liberal Party, who've already left to go on vacation, maybe they will support them. But we will not. We will continue to act as the opposition to this party and to this government that is taking Canada on such a wrong track. Thank you. Wow.